Hi there, welcome to this Great Plains Trainer 60 build series where we've built this lovely trainer and we've had the maiden flight, and actually I've had quite a lot of airtime with this plane, and I thought it was about time that I did a review of not only the build but how the plane performs in the air. And I mean, I wouldn't want to spend months building a plane like this not knowing something about how good the plans were, how good it flew, the performance. So I thought this would be really useful if you're considering doing this build. Now, the first thing we're going to look at is the actual build itself and how I found the plans, how it all went together, and what I changed, what I modified, and if I did it again, what I would do differently. Now, the plans I found really good, lots of detail. I did spend quite a bit of time researching this before I started the build to pick good plans, and they are really nice plans. And there's also a instruction sheet or a manual that comes with the plans that you can download off AutoZone, both the plans and this kind of manual. So that's really useful to have. Now, it's a very simple design because at the end of the day it's a trainer. It's a fairly box section fuselage, rounded off a little bit, but essentially box section. It's got a lovely symmetrical wing, which is really nice to build, and these sloping wingtips. And I really like this design. Really simple but good performance. Now, one of the things that I changed with this was originally on the plans it had wing dowels and rubber bands to hold the wings on. Now, I'm not a great fan of rubber bands, it's okay on vintage planes, but particularly not on this type of plane. So I designed and built a locking mechanism on the front, which consists of a couple of dowels locking into some 6mm birch ply, and that has worked lovely, and there's a whole video showing how I did that. So that was a good modification in my mind and something I would definitely do again. Now, one of the other things I did was to modify the construction of the tail. On the plans it shows it as just a solid slab structure, but I actually made a built-up tail. So if I just move around here, and hopefully you can see. So rather than having a solid slab here, this is actually, it's got a lattice work inside, and it's covered in 1/16 balsa. Again, you can see how I did that in the videos. And that actually saved me about, I think it was about 100 grams, which was quite a big saving right down, maybe 80 grams, right down at this far end when you've got the CG up here. And I think that was a really good thing to do because the plane came in underweight as suggested on the plans, which was great. Part of that saving was obviously down here, but also because I had lightened up the tail, it allowed me to get the CG really nice without adding any weight to the nose. If I had done that out of solid balsa and perhaps hadn't been so careful in the selection, I could have ended up putting lead in the nose. So having this as a hollow structure, saving weight, was great. The fin, the rudder and the elevator, they are still solid structures, but that was a great thing to do in my mind. I could just come back around here. Now, what else? I think that's more or less it, really. I built the undercarriage to plan, exactly the same dimensions on plan. I put on some wire stiffeners, which hopefully you can see under there, because I hadn't got very good grade aluminium, and that has worked really well. The undercarriage is lovely and solid. But what I would say is that if you taxi down, we're on a grass field where I fly, if you taxi down and then you turn around to head into the wind can sometimes just catch this a little bit, and with a narrow undercarriage it can just tip it onto the nose a little bit, just take it over. once you know that, you can be careful how you take it down and turn those corners. If I was building this again, I don't think I would build any wider undercarriage, because I think it would probably make it too big. But I just thought I would mention that, and you might want to do that if you're going to build it. Now, the final thing that I changed that I'll mention is the central servo, which is shown on the plans for operating the ailerons via some torsion rods. Well, I've done away with that, and I've got independent servos in each wing, and I've kept them fairly close in, and if I just lift that up, you can hopefully see the servos underneath there. I just prefer that as a solution. It gives me independent movement, so if I want differential movement on the ailerons, I can do that. And it's just something I prefer. I don't like torsion bars. I've only ever done it once, and I just didn't get on with it. But you know, it's a personal preference, and at the end of the day, if you're going to build that, you'll make your own decisions. But putting in the independent servos is really simple to do, and it adds a little bit of extra weight, but I think that's fairly insignificant really in a plane of this size. Well, I've told you what I think about the build of this and the plans, and hopefully you got the correct impression, which is it's great to build, it's a great set of plans. But the million-dollar question, how does it fly? Was it worth all the effort we'd put in to building this? Well, here's a clip of it taking off, flying and landing. So you make your own mind up by what you see, and then I'll tell you what I think. Well, as you saw, it flew absolutely lovely. On the maiden flight, I had the throws as specified in the manual or the instructions that come with the plans, and they were absolutely fine. I think it was 316 on the ailerons, half an inch on the rudder, and 3/8 on the elevator. But it was very shortly after that that I felt I needed a little bit more authority, I needed a little bit more movement. And I've now got more movement, and it's really responsive and lovely. But those throws were fine, they were nice and gentle, which is what you kind of want, or what I want on a maiden flight. So I was really pleased with that. One of the slight issues I had with the maiden flight and a couple of flights after that was that I was having to pull quite hard back, nearly all the way on the elevator, to get it to take off, which isn't something I quite like doing. So I was pulling it back gently, a bit more, and it was getting to the end of the runway, and I was sort of having to more or less pull it right the way back to get it off the ground. And I realised that the nose leg is a little bit too short, and as it was taxiing, the wings had a negative incidence, and so what I did was put a slightly bigger wheel on, which just lifted the nose up and gave just a very slight positive incidence, as it should be on the plans. Now, this isn't a fault of the plans, this is a fault of whoever built it, so hands up to that. I just got the nose leg a little bit too short. But now the takeoff's absolutely lovely, and there's no concerns over that at all. Now, as you saw, it'll spin, it will loop, it's very responsive, even with this lovely old Mirko 61, which, even though it's a 61, isn't a particularly powerful engine compared to some of the modern engines that you get of a similar size these days. But it is a great runner, and it does power it lovely. And at the end of the day, it's a trainer, it's not something we want to particularly race around at high speed. But that engine, as you saw, it will loop it without any, just with ease, and it will spin it absolutely lovely. The landings, I don't think I've ever flown a plane that had such lovely, gentle, smooth landings. It's an absolute joy to land this plane, and you can see on the videos it just comes in so gentle when it touches down, and I absolutely love it. So there's not a lot else I can say really, other than it flies lovely, it performs lovely, it does everything I ask of it. So all I can say is you really need to go out and build one of these trainers, because actually it flies a lot better than perhaps you would think a trainer ought to. It flies lovely. So I hope you've enjoyed watching this build series, and if you haven't seen the videos, have a look in the description below and you'll find a link to the playlist with all the build videos, and I can't recommend this highly enough. So thanks very much for watching, and like I say, I hope you've enjoyed the build series, or at least just watching the short clips in this video of this lovely Great Plains Trainer 60 flying.